18th century, one of the greatest composers of the age formed a unique creative relationship with a group of women that lasted for 36 years. The composer was Father Antonio Vivaldi. The female singers and instrumentalists were all figlie, or daughters of an ancient Venetian institution known as La Pieta, or the Mercy, a home for abandoned children.
Our choir from Oxford is here in Venice with an all-female orchestra to take part in the research into this little understood musical relationship.
The purpose of our trip to Venice is to help road test new discoveries about the Pieta. We're recording some of Vivaldi's great sacred music using only women's voices. This is the style in which Vivaldi meant it to be heard, but which has been treated with disbelief by musicologists for over 200 years.
So upper semitone, take a breath.
Our inspiration and the woman behind this research is Mickey White.
I want to give you a very, very special welcome. Special welcome to those who have been before, and a special welcome to those who have never been here before. We are pioneers in Vivaldi's music. All of you represent the musicians of the Pieta, and they came in as babies, and most of them stayed all their lives, and there was a very, very special relationship between Vivaldi and these women. What he understood was their position, because all of you were dumped, that you were all unwanted, and when you're unwanted, you're more vulnerable, you're more sensitive, and he understood that, and that's why he wrote in the way that he wrote. So he gave all of you a chance to star, and that's the important thing about Vivaldi's music written for the Pieta.
Principium in die virtutis tue, inspectore sanctorum, exuterunt ceferum,
Everybody visiting Venice comes here to St. Mark's Square, although for some reason today there are a lot fewer tourists than normal.
In the 18th century, wealthy travellers, mostly men, came from all over Europe to this strange, mythical floating city to enjoy a combination of culture and sex. Venice in those days had a well-deserved reputation for licentious behaviour, and in fact St. Mark's Square was a pimp's paradise.
Inevitably, this sex industry had social consequences. There was a relentless flood of unwanted babies, some of whom were severely blighted by deformities caused by syphilis. And tragically, it was not unknown for some infants to end up being dropped discreetly in the canal.
Fortunately, there was an alternative open to any woman who, for whatever reason, was unable to take care of her newborn child. Since the Middle Ages, Venice had developed a group of 4 great institutions, or ospedale, which formed a charitable welfare system for the city.
This is the oldest of the 4 institutions, the Mendicanti, Amazingly, it is still the main hospital in Venice today. It was founded in the 12th century for beggars, lepers and the destitute. Another hospital was set up for famine victims and another for sufferers from syphilis and incurable diseases. The fourth ospedale, the Pieta, was established as a home for abandoned children in the 14th century. Elsie Arnold is a Venetian historian and a friend of Mickey White's who lives in Oxford. So can you tell us, what were the ospedali and what was their role?
The role was they were hospitals. They were everything. They were orphanages, schools, hospitals, old people's homes. They looked after you when you died, and they were very worthy organisations. And I think it was almost by accident that music came to a fore when they discovered, and I'm sure it's partly to do with the Grand Tour, they realised that these foreigners liked listening to good music, especially during Lent when the opera houses were closed.
Gloria, 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 in excelsis Deo.
In the early 1700s, after a heavy bout of debauchery, the wealthy tourists came to the great churches of the city to ease their guilt and listen to some of the finest music in Europe. For the congregation listening in the body of the church, there was the added frisson that the women singing in the galleries high above them were hidden from view behind metal grills. This allowed the audience only an opaque silhouette of the choir producing the heavenly sounds.
They sing like angels, and I swear there is nothing more diverting than the sight of a young and pretty woman with a bunch of pomegranate blossoms over her ear, conducting the orchestra with all the grace imaginable.
This afternoon I went again to the Pieta. There was not much company, and the girls played 1,000 tricks in singing, particularly in the duets, where there was a trial of skill and of natural powers, as who could go highest and lowest, swell a note the longest, or run divisions with the greatest rapidity. At the hospitals and churches, where it's not allowed to applaud in the same manner as at the opera, they cough, hem, and blow their noses to express admiration.
I can conceive of nothing as voluptuous or as moving as this music. What grieves me are those accursed grills, which allow only notes to pass through and conceal the angels of loveliness. As I listen, I feel a tremor of love such as I have never experienced before. Who were these extraordinary musicians behind the grills? On the one hand, objects of erotic fantasy.
On the other hand, a sad and motley collection of the deformed and the disfigured. We know that some of the women were born with disabilities due to syphilis contracted by their mothers, and others were permanently scarred by ringworm or smallpox.
In 1738, at the end of Vivaldi's time working here at the hospital known as the Pieta,